and together, we're going to take some time here and provide a little introduction to the project for those that are less familiar with it. And then we want to leave ample time at the end for questions and answers. So this is our second Q&A session. We hosted the first session on May 25th. And we do have some answers that we posted online through the city's website if you're interested to look back and find those. We're going to cover the same content today as we did on the 25th. The intent is really just to make sure we reach more of you. We're really excited about this aspect of the project. Link Transit has been been planned for a couple of years now. We've been developing the design for the route and the stations, and the public art is another aspect of that will enrich these stations and the experience for transit riders and the communities. So we're really happy that you were able to attend today to find out more about it and decide whether it's something that you want to apply for. Next slide, please. So public art in this transit project is envisioned to be an integral part of the station design. Early on, we worked with some community people who we call the co-design group, and in conjunction with our co-designers and through other community engagement, the incorporation of art became an important theme that the city has chosen to move ahead with. Some of these ideas that you see here on the slide were first thoughts about how the art could really make the stations more memorable. There may be opportunities to represent the past, present, future of the city, and to celebrate the diverse community, cultures, environment, and seasons that make Rochester a unique place. The community engagement that I refer to is really only the start. We plan to engage the artists that are selected for the process in additional community engagement to help to inform the development of those artwork concepts. I think it's also important to note that the artists that are selected will become part of the design team. They'll actually be contracted with SRF Consulting, my firm. And the intent is that we'll collaborate closely, and the design team will have the role of supporting the process by providing some technical input on aesthetics and durability. And then ultimately, it'll be our responsibility to prepare the final construction documents as well. Next. This is a map that shows the overall route, and it shows the route that extends from the west part of town in the location that's being planned as the West Transit Village. And the route runs for 2.8 miles east and west along 2nd Street primarily. And then in the Civic Center and Rochester Arts Center area near the river, the route makes a turn and heads south along 3rd Avenue. And its eastern terminus is the downtown waterfront Southeast Station. So as you can see, there are 7 stations that are highlighted on this map. And there are 12 platforms overall. Most stations have 2 platforms, but the West Transit Village and the downtown waterfront Southeast Station only have a single platform. Those are our terminus stations. A couple things to note here about these individual stations. There are 2 areas in particular where there are some historic contexts that we'll be working in, where some additional review of the art concepts and their integration in the stations will need to be looked at. The St. Mary's Transit Center area and the 2nd Avenue station area are in the near proximity to some historic buildings and historic districts. So there'll be a little bit of extra coordination in those particular areas. Next slide, please. At this point, I'm going to hand it to my partner, Nathan, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about the design for the stations.
Thank you, Michael. So my name is Nathan Johnson. I'm an architect with Formula Architecture based in St. Paul, Minnesota. We've been working with Michael on this project almost 2 years right now. So it's been a little while. I'm going to spend a little bit of time just kind of walking you through the design of the station and the station area so you can begin thinking about how art could integrate within this environment. So our platforms, as Michael indicated, there's 12 platforms along the line. Most of them are paired up, and then the 2 at each end are single platforms. And the platforms, all of our platforms are 80 feet long to accommodate a 60-foot articulated bus. It's a 3-door kind of bus that gets supported at all of the station areas. We have basically 2 depths of platforms along the alignment, and one is the majority of them are 10 feet deep, and then they have a sidewalk that goes behind, as you can kind of see in this illustration. And then there's a few locations where the platforms are a little bit deeper because they have higher ridership, and those are 13-foot platforms. The way the station is designed is that at the near side, so the side where the bus approaches, we have a very tall marker, and that marker in the majority of the locations is 15 feet tall. So you can see that very tall marker in that location with the opportunity to integrate art within it. And I'll have a diagram a little bit later, which kind of really illustrates the opportunities that we perceive, at least for the artist, to kind of engage around this station. There's a curb which separates the pedestrian space from the transit space that you'll see along the back edge with the railing. And integrated into that curb are what we have referred to as booths, which are kind of these U-shaped shelters that let you access the bus. You'll also see a fairly extensive canopy. It covers about 70% of the platform area, and we're proposing wood in the ceiling to kind of really warm up that space with a kind of curve shape on each end. And that is supported by 2 columns that you can kind of see there, stone columns along the platform. At the far side of the platform, what you see is a shelter. So this is kind of a larger enclosed shelter to provide a little bit more weather protection than what I refer to as the booths provide. And what that does is that gives a lot of different types of environment on the platform that people can occupy. So a more enclosed space, you can stand in the open air, you can stand in the open air covered by canopy, and you can have kind of the U-shaped booths. And within this context, along this 80-foot platform, we have a lot of opportunities for art. If you don't mind going to the next slide. So this shows the concept at just a different location. So one of the locations which has really high ridership, and we're actually introducing a vertical enclosure, is at the St. Mary's Transit Center. And I believe it's right in front of kind of the historic main entrance to St. Mary's Hospital there. And we actually have 2 historic locations along the corridor, which is at the St. Mary's Hospital and then at the historic area near the Mayo Clinic's kind of main space, kind of in downtown Rochester. At those locations, we're proposing a shorter marker. So where all the other stations have a 24, 25-foot marker, I may have misspoke that earlier. These stations are only about a 15-foot tall marker in those locations with the highlighted link on the top, some transit information on the bottom. You'll see that the format of this station is very similar to the previous, where you can see the wood canopy, you can see the booths, which are a little bit deeper just because I have a little bit more space on the platform. But at the far end, what you'll see is that in lieu of a shelter, we actually have a full enclosure, which is vertically tied into a subway, which allows you to go back and forth kind of across 2nd Street to a transit center, which is on the north side of 2nd Street Southwest there. You can go to the next slide. So this diagram begins to illustrate all the different ways that we see art could be integrated into the platform or the station area. Our goal is not to limit opportunities, but to let you as an artist kind of identify the areas that you would like to engage. So we provide a space within the marker where there's a screen that we show right now that's a decorative screen. You can replace that decorative screen with art. You can integrate artwork into the railing. The stone columns that we kind of indicate, or cast stone columns technically is what they are. We could look at integrating art into those. We could look at integrating art into the glass. We can look at integrating art into the platform. But the idea is that you as the public artist have a lot of different ways that you could plug in and participate in the art at any of the station areas. You can go to the next slide. So the RFQ, it is posted to the City of Rochester's website, and then we have a cafe site where we're asking people to kind of submit. What we're asking you to do or respond to in the RFQ is a description of why art and civic space is important, a description of how you foster and support collaboration, and a description of your strategy to develop artwork concepts that can be implemented within the budget and time frame identified. We perceive the successful artist statement and project approach being experiential, being interactive, connecting people in place, engaging the City of Rochester, engaging this as the destination medical center, engaging the community, having a clear vision, being collaborative, and being able to be supported by previous work that's already been done. You can go on to the next slide. The intent is that instead of the artist having a standalone contract with the City of Rochester, that you'll actually be contracted by SRF, which is Michael's firm, to work with the entire design team. So it's a big design team on a big project. And we anticipate selecting up to 4 artists or artist teams to work with us on developing public art for the station areas. There are 2 stations per artist or team except St. Mary's. The primary collaboration will be between what is called 60% engineering and 90% engineering. So we're actually about to submit 60% engineering drawings in July. I think the timeline has the artists obviously getting selected after that, but you'll be collaborating a lot with us when we issue 90% engineering drawings next year. You can go to the next slide. So this kind of illustrates the timeline as proposed. So we have an issue date. We had a Q&A on May 25th. We have some written questions deadline, and then we did post an addenda, which should be available on the City of Rochester site. And then not quite 2 weeks, so 11 days. So next week, Friday, we're asking you to submit your RFQ to us so we can review it. We anticipate shortlisting artists or artist teams by July 8th, and that we would do artist interviews probably in the July 11th to 15th range. Notification of selection, July 18th to the 22nd, and then approval on contracts in August so that you can work with us on developing public art for the station areas. You can go to the next slide. So to contact an application, we have a website or a call set up in the cafe system, and that's where we're asking you to actually submit your statement of qualifications. The City of Rochester has a link to the information specifically about the stations and to the public art call, where a more detailed version of the RFQ is available there. And your primary point of contact, so all questions should be directed to Michael. Go to the next slide. So with that, we're going to open it up for any questions that you all may have.
And I would add, we jumped in pretty quickly there and gave an overview of the design itself, a little bit of the lay of the land. So we are happy to talk about any different types of questions. They could be about the design that we just shared with you, or it could be about the RFQ process if you need any clarifications that are in the document there. We could do this a couple of different ways. Through Zoom, you should be able to submit a question by typing it in using the icon that says Q&A, and then we'll have opportunity to address that verbally. If you would prefer, I think we also have the ability, if you want to use the raise your hand function, and we can turn on your mic so that you could just ask the question verbally. And Nathan and I will do the best to respond to what you have for us.
All right, first up, we have a written question that is asking, can you put anything on top of the structure?
So I guess I can respond to that, make sure I understand your question right. We do provide a place for art integrated into the marker. We aren't structured in such a way that we don't have anything, we haven't proposed that anything can be added on top of the canopy area that was illustrated before. But within the marker, yes, there's an opportunity to integrate art within that. I don't believe it can carry anything. I mean, it's not, so we have to work with our structural engineer to kind of identify a material and a loading that can be accommodated within that space, but I think there is some flexibility. So I think if that's a space that you would want to put something within the stationary, we could definitely integrate it into the marker. I guess the railings, like if you wanted to put something on the curb is pretty stout, so we can make some modifications to the railing to accommodate it, but I think we'd have to look at that. We'll be working with the artist teams very closely, the architectural teams and the structural teams, to kind of identify how to develop and design the artwork that you're proposing.
Next question here is from Matt. Matt asks, are we interested in three-dimensional work, such as bike racks or other functional elements? And I think something like unique bike racks is definitely something we would consider. Nathan shared our diagram of our initial thinking about potential art opportunities in the immediate platform shelter space. One of the aspects of the design that we're working on is trying to make it multimodal, and that does include bike parking in the near vicinity. So the bike parking is not directly on the platform, but it would be close by, and I think that's something we might consider as a potential art opportunity as well.
So the next question is from David, asking about being able to, if I understand correctly, if art could be painted onto surfaces. I would say I definitely think there's some opportunities for that. The biggest thing we'll want to evaluate is making sure that we get paint that isn't going to require a lot of maintenance over time by the owner. So that would be the challenge. But how you apply the art to the surfaces, I think we'll be able to entertain a lot of different options, whether it's engraved or it's painted. So I think there's some flexibility there. We've also done like vinyl wraps, like if you want to introduce color as well. So I think there's a fair amount of things we can talk about.
All right, next we have a raised hand from Jarrett, who I will allow to talk, and then if you'll just unmute yourself, Jared, and ask your question.
Hi, Nathan. Hi, Michael. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, go ahead, Jared. Thank you.
Just a couple follow-up questions about the design. About how much room is there from the paving to the underside of the ceiling in the structures you're showing?
So right now, I believe it's illustrated at 11 feet. We're still finalizing those details, but that's what it is right now. From kind of the flat ceiling, it's 11 feet.
Okay. And is there any ability to suspend or hang artwork from the underside of the ceiling, given if it was lightweight and adaptable to work with your ceiling system and attachment methods?
I mean, that isn't something we initially considered, but I can't see why not. And from a possibility, obviously, we have to and we still have to integrate kind of other components of the platform like lighting and signage and things. So as long as it didn't obstruct kind of those things, I think there may be some opportunities for that.
If part of the art was a lighting element or something that was, used electricity, then is that allowed or desired as well?
Yes. So actually, something I forgot to mention when we did our presentation is we're actually integrating color changing LEDs into the marker. We're also looking at it for other areas of the platform, but I think there is a desire for kind of interactive lighting to be thought about as an artistic medium within the platform area.
Okay. And then I was interested in seeing that some of the shelters have a larger enclosed shelter and wondering if that was a space interior to that where an art installation could go.
I think the intent of, and Michael, please chime in as well. The intent of the shelter is it's actually for people. So obviously within Rochester and downtown Rochester, there are times that there's a lot of volume of people that we anticipate using the transit platforms. So they're sized to accommodate that. I guess we'd have to see what your proposal is if you're trying to really impede the amount of people that gather there. I think that may be a challenge. But
my question was with the thought related to the previous question, if there was something suspended from the ceiling, something spatial and atmospheric, but not extending down to the pedestrian, level, something that was part of that.
Yeah, there are some opportunities for that. The one thing that we do have in that enclosed shelter is we have some hanging heating devices. So it just would need to be coordinated with those and we have to look at if it's combustible. I mean, those are technical challenges, but that's why we're kind of integrating you into the design team such that we can take your great ideas and then technically we kind of begin to help you figure out. And then I think that's one of the unique opportunities on this project. You don't need to hire a structural engineer. You don't need to hire an electrical engineer. Those are within the design team. So you have that resource to help you develop your ideas regarding your public art.
Okay, great. And then last question is, at what point are you looking for specific ideas in the proposal? Is it intended that during the interview process it might go more in that, or are you looking in this initial stage for some sort of a description or illustration of a design?
Jared, I just want to clarify that right now we're not asking for a specific design proposal, and that's not the way that artists would be evaluated. We're asking people to submit their qualifications, and then after that, there would be some coordination, and artists would be paired with different station area designs. As Nathan noted in the presentation, there is a desire to create visual interests and make memorable spaces and have variety along the corridor. And that's why we're looking at multiple teams or multiple artists. There would be nothing that would necessarily preclude you from sharing some thoughts during an interview phase about what could be done. And I really appreciate all the kind of innovative thoughts that our people are asking right now. Nathan and I are kind of approaching this with open minds. We really want to hear what opportunities the artists see as well. But also we're going to be putting some parameters on them when it comes to the function of the stations and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jared. Next up, we have Octavio has their hand raised. So I will allow you to talk, and if you'll just unmute to ask your question.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the opportunity. It looks very exciting. With this last participation, some of the things I was intended to ask were answered, but I just wanted to know, in terms of production, because there are opportunities to include tile and diverse technical installations. So what I was thinking is your team will provide that help in terms of production. Let's say if there is a proposal that includes work in all these 5 or 6 areas, you will have a team to build that with the artist team, or the artist team will be in charge of installing. Example, thinking on the columns, I was thinking in some kind of tile, like working on that and on the columns, as well as the canopy or the glass art. So, but it becomes a lot of work. How you see that like happening in terms of how big the proposal can be, or how many things can happen at the same time in the same station?
It's a good question. So I think one thing that's important to understand is that the budget that we've developed for incorporating art each station is broken down between developing the design and then some budget that will be reserved for the future for the fabrication installation of the art. And what we're asking artists to provide their qualifications for right now is that first design development aspect. I think it's important to know that ultimately this overall transit project will be publicly bid. And so there'll be a contractor that gets awarded the project, and ultimately that contractor will be responsible for the fabrication installation of the all the components of the station itself and ultimately the art. I recognize that some of the media that artists may do, and you may be used to doing that physical work yourselves, and it's not our intent to preclude you from kind of getting that later work, but this current design phase is only for like developing the design, not the actual installation of it.
Okay, yeah. I suppose that's it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Appreciate the question. I'm seeing a couple of additional questions in the chat here. Eric asks, what is the overall expected duration for the project from selection to delivery to the client for the artists? I'll cover this generally. There is some more specificity to the schedule in the RFQ that I would refer you to. But generally, as Nathan showed in the slide, in the schedule, we anticipate the August timeframe being utilized to get artists under contract. So then starting in September is when artists and the design team will engage and first collaborate. Fairly shortly after, we're planning for initial community engagement. And then the time frame between the 60% design and 90% design phase that Nathan outlined is essentially from fall through early next spring. And so there'll be opportunities for collaboration along that time frame. There is the need to have designs fairly well established later this fall in the October timeframe, so that further review can be initiated amongst stakeholders and the community. Subsequent to that, there'll be more detailed collaboration so that the art concepts can be kind of fully integrated into the design documents. So just in summary again, roughly late summer until spring of next year.
And then I think I can take on the other two questions that have come up. So the first one is, I understand the wrap is welcome to be applied to some areas, including the glass. So in regards to applied artwork, yes. I mean, I think the glass is a great opportunity to do that. And there's a number of glass surfaces within the station area. And in addition to that, we could find other surfaces where it could be the marker being one of them as well. And I don't know if it's the best at the columns in regards to, because they're stone material, that may not, we have to just look functionally if that works really well applied to kind of that surface. But yes, there's a number of places where you could integrate some type of wrap. The second question in regards to, should the proposals for station incorporate art into all identified areas? So as Michael kind of alluded to earlier, we're asking for qualifications right now. We're not asking for you to propose a solution in regards to the art. If you want to suggest something, or at least what your approach would be, I think that is appropriate. The budget right now, or the budget for the artwork, is $60,000 per platform. There's 12 platforms along the entire alignment, so it's $60,000 per platform. And Michael kind of mentioned it, but didn't gonna give the dollar amount. But then we have $12,000 of that $60,000 budget is allocated for the artist to develop their concepts. There's not an expectation that artwork at the station will hit all or touch all the areas that we identified in our art opportunities diagram. Obviously, we want artwork that's going to fit within the budget. So if you find that you get the most impact from doing something at the railing, and that ends up using up the majority of the budget, you can do it there. But I think the idea is that there's a number of different places you can touch, and then you as the artist kind of decide where you want to kind of use the resources that you can have the type of impact that you want at each station or at each platform.
I would say there may be interest in incorporating the theme in multiple features at a particular station, and that's been done effectively in other projects. Using it in different surfaces may reinforce that theme and make it stand out. But we do need to be mindful of the budget and how far that will stretch as well. Matt is asking, is the $60,000 budgeted for each platform divided among multiple artists per station? So I'll answer that by saying that 60,000 is the budget for each platform. So if an artist chooses to submit their qualifications on their own and is selected, then they're entitled to the stipend that's identified for the platforms that they're given. If an artist team chooses to submit together multiple people, they would need to share the budget per platform.
And just as a note, I know we had this in the presentation. We anticipate selecting up to 4 artists over 12 platforms.
And we're not predetermining, how artists would be assigned to different platforms at this point. It's our intent as after the selection process to kind of review the proposals and the medium and skills that different artists bring, and kind of help determine which stations seem like the best fit. I think a question just popped in from Foster. Foster asks, Cafe does not ask for a resume, curriculum vitae or mentioned artist teams. Can you elaborate on this format? Foster, in the RFQ, we do list out the pieces of the submittal that we want artists to include.
And I can talk through. So essentially what happens is on the cafe website, we give you the option to submit images or videos. And then you also have the ability to answer, I think, the three questions that were identified previously. But then the expectation is that you're actually uploading a statement of qualifications, like a PDF document, to the cafe website. And then within that statement of qualifications, that's where you could include those other items and then the specific items that are on the checklist. So it will be a PDF document that you can upload to the cafe website.
And I will just refer directly to the RFQ and read off the handful of things that we're requesting from artists that submit. So this is in section 12. It's called application checklist. We're asking for a signed letter of interest, an artist statement or project approach. Nathan previously provided a little bit more background on that. A professional resume, work samples in digital format, a work sample narrative, and then 3 professional references.
Looks like we have a hand up, Alyssa.
I see Eric has a hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for this the presentation and taking our questions. About the I posted the question about the duration of the kind of overall commitment for the artist in the project. I'm curious. It sounds like the initial commitment and ask is up until next spring, which would be that initial contract phase of working kind of as part of the design team. And then once that has been accepted, if the artwork is accepted, I'm guessing it moves forward into fabrication. There's the public bidding for who is fabricating. But so I know for myself, and I'm sure other artists would feel, that there's a necessity to be a part of the around for the fabrication process, trying to figure out the best wording for it, but to be able to be part of those conversations to make sure things are being installed correctly, the material choices, things like that. There an opportunity for a second contractual phase after spring to be a part of overseeing the finalization, testing, fabrication side of the project?
We currently don't have a plan to have an additional contract with artists beyond that point to provide construction oversight. As I noted before, we're not intending to preclude artists from being involved in the actual fabrication installation, but artists would need to do that in conjunction with the bidding contractor that's going to be doing all the construction work. And it's hard to cover all the potential opportunities in kind of one summary statement, but there certainly may be some types of work that is better suited to being communicated just within drawings, and that can be fabricated by a contractor, and then some media that there's a different kind of a craft in individual artists' work, and it'll be the design team's role to ultimately develop the project specifications that guide the contractor that will be bidding, and there can be provisions that include shop drawings, potential engagement in the future, but that would be through a separate contract with that construction contractor.
Thanks, that's very helpful. Appreciate it.
Megan has a question. She asks if imagery is to be installed on a substrate, that means the final artwork should be complete by spring. So the time frame for actually developing the design and completing it is going to be this fall. The architecture team is going to need some time in the interim between fall and spring to develop the design details and specifications. That there will be opportunity for ongoing collaboration back and forth, so it doesn't need to be completely finalized in graphic form by this fall, but it needs to be far enough along that we can accurately represent it in renderings that the design team is doing and incorporate it into plans and specs. Megan's follow-up question was asked about painting or paintings. Looks like maybe I answered that adequately. Well, we have about 15 minutes remaining in our time here. I wanted to make a couple of concluding thoughts, but happy to take a couple additional questions if anything comes to mind while we're wrapping up. I just wanted to reiterate that the RFQ materials are available both through the city's project website and the cafe site. Alicia, maybe we want to put up that concluding slide there, just in case people missed those links. They found the way to register for the Q&A, so I'm assuming that they generally have found information online as well, but just want to have this available for people. So these are the two places to go for additional information and background. Again, the RFQ submittals are due June 24th. The packages should be submitted through the cafe website. So please check that out. The design team might be able to provide a little bit of technical assistance if you have questions about how to submit there or encounter any difficulties. So please let me know, and we'll try to help you figure that out if we can. So it's really important to get everything in on June 24th. The design team will be facilitating review of those submittals pretty quickly the following week. So we're going to be strict about holding to that deadline so that we can get materials to our advisory committee ahead of time for their review. As we did after our first Q&A session, we did post some formal responses to things, just so everybody, in case they didn't get to attend this Q&A session, has access to the same information. So we will get a document posted online that addresses all the questions that we heard from you today, and make that available. We have your email addresses through your registration process today, so we'll make sure to get that those responses directly to you in addition to posting them online. Seeing another question that just popped in here from Lily. She asks, once artists have created the conceptual designs by the fall timeline, will they be able to bid to fabricate the artwork too, or will that be only handled by contractor bids? The artwork will not be separated out as individual bids. The artwork will be part of the overall transit construction contract. So an artist would need to be in contact with the general contractors that are bidding on the overall project. Nathan, did you want to add anything else from your standpoint?
Yeah, I don't think anything substantively different. The way that it will work from a contractual standpoint is that you will work with the design team on the artwork, and how you want to get it integrated. We'll actually include that in our documentation. And so depending on the type of artwork and how it gets constructed, and we develop what are called specifications, we can say that you need that how you procure the artwork. If it's like specific to your fabrication method, then we could write that into our drawings and specifications, like go obtain this artwork from such and such, if it's like a custom like sculpture or something like that. So I think we'll work with you closely to make sure that your artwork gets fabricated correctly. And if it's something that you all need to install, or it's something that you're providing, the contractor will structure the documents in such a way that they can obtain the right material.
Well, I'm not seeing much new come in the door as far as additional questions. So I think with that, we will conclude the session for today. Please feel free to reach out if additional questions come to mind in the interim before the submittal due date. And we'll try to answer your questions as best as possible. We will be posting a recording of this session, making it available through the project website. So we will get that up as soon as we can. And we really appreciate everybody taking the time to listen in today and quizzing us a little bit. Lots of great questions. And we're really looking forward to getting this process going and beginning to work closely with the selected artist, because we, as a design team, really feel strongly that this is going to be an important aspect of enriching the station design and fitting it into the community. Thanks for attending, and we're looking forward to seeing your submittals.